This is Rob Morse of the Self-Defense Gun Stories podcast. I'm reminding you that this podcast is one of the many good ones on the Self-Defense Radio Network. Check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Welcome to Unload and Show Clear, the podcast about all things IDPA. And now, here's your host, a man for whom getting stuck in traffic was the only thing worse than sticking around for day one of nationals, Lloyd Bailey.
Welcome to another episode of Unload and Show Clear. This is a podcast about the men and women who compete in IDPA, International Defensive Pistol Association. Now, I've been attending IDPA matches since 2011, and over the years, I've met some really amazing people thanks to this sport. Ignore all the colorful jerseys and the sponsor logos, and underneath you're going to find everyday men and women who volunteer their time and their effort and spend their hard-earned dollars on travel, match fees, and gear to make this sport great. And today you're going to meet another one of these awesome people. But first, I want to thank today's sponsor. Before we get started, let me tell you about GlockTriggers.com. Love them or hate them, the one thing you know about Glock pistols is that they are reliable. Out of the box, to the range, absolutely reliable. It's what makes them so popular with competitors, law enforcement, military, and responsible armed citizens. But one of the drawbacks is that stock trigger. Well, Jeff Wilson and the folks at Glock Triggers asked themselves, how do we make them better while maintaining reliability? Using stock parts as their foundation, they've refined the interaction of the metal parts to give you smoother take-up, a cleaner break, and reduced overtravel without sacrificing safety or reliability. Recommended and used by people like Bob Vogel, Travis Haley, and Ken Hackathorn, Glock Triggers custom trigger kits come with a lifetime warranty and a 30-day satisfaction guarantee. Visit them today at GlockTriggers.com and check out the Edge, the Vogel, the Skimmer, the Guardian, and the Hackathorn trigger systems. Use the promo code from this podcast, USC20, and save 20% off of your entire order. GlockTriggers.com. The highest quality drop-in trigger system for your Glock. Our special guest today is Debbie Singer from Tivoli, New York, our first New Yorker on the show. Welcome to the show, Debbie. I really appreciate you coming on.
No problem. Anytime. As you said, got to represent New York.
That's right. So, tell us a little about yourself. Tell us what you do for a living there in Tivoli.
So I actually am a dental hygienist. And I work in an office down in Wappingers Falls, and it's called Wappingers Falls Dental Arts. I've been at this particular office for 8 years, and that's what pays for me to travel around the country doing IDPA matches.
Well, I hope that pays well. That's awesome. And that's a first. You are our first dental hygienist. We have a lot of pilots, but no dental hygienists. So
no dental hygienists. That's right.
Representing the dental hygienists around the country. So you're native of New York. Did you grow up around guns as a kid, or were you introduced to them later, or how did that all work?
So I grew up in a pretty liberal Democratic family. No guns at all when I was growing up. When I moved up, I call it upstate, but it's not really upstate. But when I moved up to where I am, I shot a few guns here and there, then had kids and raising the kids, and the guns kind of got put to the side. But when I was probably about 40, I said, these gun things are pretty fun. So, so I started shooting, and I had my friend Keith Gibson introduced me to IDPA, and the rest is history. Bought my first gun, bought my second gun, bought the third. It just snowballed.
Right. It's like rabbits; they tend to multiply.
They do. So, So my family, of course, thinks I'm kind of nuts, but that's okay.
But yours is the house they're going to come to when the world ends, right?
Exactly. I got plenty of ammo, plenty of guns, and plenty of food. I'm good to go.
So what was that first gun that you bought, and why?
So the first gun that I bought was an M&P in 9.
Mm-hmm.
And when I bought that gun, I have to be honest, I had no clue what I was doing. I had shot a 9mm. A friend of mine had let me shoot a 9mm, and I'm like, it's a 9. 9 is 9. So I just, bought the gun, and that gun and I argued a lot. We definitely argued a lot, and I didn't get along with it, and which is typical of somebody buying a gun that they have no clue what they're doing.
Right.
So, and a couple of the guys that I was shooting with, they kept throwing a revolver in my hand, and they're like, shoot this. And I'd shoot it, and I'd shoot it really well. And I'm like, but I'm stubborn. I'm like, no, I have this M&P. I got to learn to shoot this, and I'm going to shoot this, and blah, blah, blah. So, I finally gave in, and I bought a Smith Model 19 revolver.
Oh, okay.
And I competed with that for several years, and I still have that gun, and I love that gun. It's one of my favorites. But then I figured out that, okay, 6 rounds, 10 rounds, no, there's definitely an advantage to being in ESP right now.
Right, and even when you're fast as a revolver shooter, you're still slow.
Oh gosh, yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, let's face it though, you look kind of cool on the range with a revolver, because there's
That's
not many.
true. There's a certain mystique about it because there's so few people doing it now that it
exactly.
Who was it I had on the show? They said, yeah, you walk on the range and everybody turns and looks and they're like, hey, he must be really good. He shoots a revolver.
That must have been Brad.
Probably.
Yeah.
So now you're shooting ESP. What's the ESP gun now?
I'm shooting 1911. I'm shooting the Springfield Armory Range Officer.
Okay.
And I really like that gun.
How did you hear about IDPA, and where did you go for the first time you went to a match?
So I heard about IDPA, as I said. My friend Keith introduced myself and my girlfriend Trish to IDPA. We went down to a range in Dutchess County, mm-hmm. and shot down there for the first time, and it was like, wow, this is a lot of fun. You get to move, you have moving targets, you know, all that good stuff. And then I started IDPA up here where I live at one of our local clubs, and we just did some local matches. And we probably had a good 20 people shooting at one time.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember that first match? Do you remember how you did and what it was like experiencing, not just watching it, but actually shooting it yourself?
Oh my gosh, I was so nervous. So nervous, because I was a green shooter. I was a new shooter, and you know, it's like, oh, I'm going to make a fool out of myself and all this other good stuff. And it turns out that, as you know, and as I'm well aware, that anybody that shoots IDPA are just the greatest people around. They help you. They want to see you succeed. And these guys were great. I did horribly, of course, because I was so nervous, but I had
fun. Did you feel, you know, I've talked to some female shooters who, you know, talk about there's sort of an intimidation factor because there's usually mostly, if not all, guys at a match. Mm-hmm. Was there a sense of, like, how did that feel? What was that like for you?
So for me personally, I know, because I've talked to other women about that, because they do get kind of freaked out, like, oh, look at all these men here and blah, blah, blah. For me, it wasn't an issue. It never has been an issue, only because of, I guess, what I do for a living, because I talk to people all day and I see different people all day. So I'm not intimidated very much with people. Mm-hmm. And being, as you said, mostly the only woman out on the range most of the time, you kind of have to develop a little bit of a thick skin too.
Right.
You know?
So what was the what did you do after that first match? You're hooked. You love this. You think, oh,
Oh
this is
yeah.
a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
What happened next, and how long after that was it that you decided I'm going to pay the big bucks and go shoot a major match?
So it was probably, oh my gosh, I'm going to say at least 6 months after that I got talked into doing a major match, and that was and I wish I could remember which one it was. I don't. Um, but it was great. It was amazing. It was amazing just to see it on a bigger scale. And that really hooked me there.
Mm-hmm. What is there anything specific about that particular match or your performance that you remember from that day?
Well, I still stunk, but but I had fun. um, uh, it, I think just the stages, how they were set up, the design of them, the props. I mean, all that stuff. You're kind of googly eyed the first major match that you go to, and it's like, wow.
Yep. So you you then became interested enough to actually become a safety officer, and you're
Yeah.
now a safety officer instructor. So how did that come about, and what was the interest in getting that involved at that level?
Well, become a safety officer because I totally enjoy working the matches as much as I do shooting them. And my area here didn't have any safety officer instructors. So I had talked to a few of the higher ups, and they're like, "Yeah, absolutely, do it." So here I am.
See a need, fill a need.
Yep, exactly.
Very cool. So, what is it when you're teaching safety officers yourself? What is, in your opinion, what's the what do you look for in a good safety officer?
Um, Main thing is that they're going to know the rules and the rule book and how to work a match, but not be a rule Nazi.
Right. Oh, come on, we don't have those in this sport.
That's right. And generally, everybody that I've given the class to has been wonderful. You look for their personality also. Some people just don't have the personality to be a safety officer.
Well, and as a safety officer, you got to deal with every single shooter that comes through. So
Absolutely.
if you're not personable, it's
Absolutely.
going to be a miserable
Absolutely.
day.
Absolutely. And the other thing is that you have to be able to get along. You have to play nicely with others because it's not just you on that bay. You have others that you're working with. And
Hmm.
yeah, and you can't, and I tell people all the time, I said, you can't go there and be in a crappy mood. If you just had a fight with your husband, your wife, your whatever, you got to put that aside.
Hmm.
That's you leave that at the door and do what you have to do on the range.
Yep. So what's a season like for you now? How far do you travel, and what matches do you try to get to each year?
So I probably do. I just counted it up the other day. I probably do five or six major matches a season,
Hmm.
and then at least once or twice a month a local match that I
Right.
do. And I've been doing nationals for the past, oh my gosh, 10 years.
Oh wow.
Yeah, the nationals and the worlds. Yeah.
Do you have a memory from a particular match or two, or um,
Oh well, of course, my favorite match is my match that I did over at Smith and Wesson. I have the distinction of being the first and only that I know of right now female match director of a national match.
really? Well, that's awesome.
Yeah,
That is awesome. Tell us
yeah.
tell us about that match and what went
So
into to running that match.
so that was the first ever national bug match, the backup gun match.
Hmm.
And that was held at Smith and Wesson, and we were restricted to only 5 shots. And that was because Smith had the J frame that only hold 5 shots.
Right.
Yeah. So we had to design the stages around that. But the theme that I did the Roaring Twenties. And that was our theme for the match.
Neat.
And it was a blast. It was an absolute blast. And then for the banquet at the end of it, we all dressed up from the Roaring Twenties.
Oh, how
Yeah.
cool.
It was very, very cool. The girl, all us girls were as flappers, and the guys had the pinstripe suits on, and it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
How neat. What
Yeah.
talk about the stages that you built with that restriction of 5 shots. What was this the first time that you had directed a match? I would assume you had some practice before this. Talk, they didn't just throw you in feet first and say sink or swim.
That's right. Sink or swim. Here we go.
Right.
No, I had been working some of the other indoor nationals. I was assistant match director for a few of those.
Okay.
And so I had, some experience doing that. The stages, as I said, we were restricted to 5 shots each, but you could have like 3 strings on each stage.
Okay.
So it worked. We had one. I'm trying to remember now. It was a few years ago, but we had one where we had a piano and we hollowed out the piano, and your gun was stuck in the piano. That's where it was stored. Yeah, it was. We had some pretty cool props. We had a dining room table. And we made a tray that had a cover on it, and your gun was underneath that, and you had to lift the tray up, the cover up, and then shoot. Yeah, it was pretty. It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool.
Beyond the kind of driving distance matches there in the Northeast for you, and of course worlds or nationals, whether they be in Texas or Oklahoma or Alabama, do you get out and make long road trips, or do you how big is the territory that you try to reach each year?
So I'll go all the way up to New Hampshire to the Live Free or Die match,
Right.
which if you ever have a chance to get there, go for that one. That is just an amazing, amazing match up there.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go up to New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Maryland. That pretty much covers about where I'll go. Yeah.
That's funny. It's something just came to mind. You're talking about the Live Free or Die, the slogan of the state and the match. And you shoot a lot of matches in states where gun owners would say we're not really very free. You're in you're in New York, you're shooting matches in Massachusetts, you're shooting matches in Maryland, not exactly gun-friendly states. And I don't want to get really into the politics of it, but how does that affect you as a shooter in terms of being able to travel with your gear? And, what is it like if someone were to come to the Saratoga match or the Empire State, or to go to the Chesapeake match, or to the match in Massachusetts? What is it like for somebody to travel to those areas? Because I talked to someone earlier who said, I wanted to get to those matches, but I'm really nervous about doing it because of the laws in those states.
Because of the laws. Yeah. So all these matches are NRA sanctioned.
Mm-hmm.
So you get that nice little piece of paper that says that you can travel across state lines with your firearm. You must obviously follow the laws.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that the gun is locked up. It's separate from the ammo. Personally, I've never had a problem, and I've flown with my guns. I've gone to Florida with them, Talladega, right. Whatever. I've never had an issue, but you got to follow the law.
Right.
And you can't have high capacity magazines, 10 rounders, and that's 10 round and under, and that's it. So it's not a problem, and people should not be afraid to come to any of these matches.
Mm-hmm.
but I understand it. I get it.
What's the best way for someone who wants to come to one of those matches to find out, well, what laws do I need to follow? What for New York? New York's got a really interesting, um, with this,
Interesting is a good word for
with the
it.
SAFE Act, you've got a really restrictive, does that, how does because 10 rounds is above what's legal in New York,
No,
but
it's 10 rounds.
is it 10? Okay.
It's 10.
They
The
amended it.
Supreme Court knocked that 7 round down. So you're allowed to have 10 rounds. You are always allowed to have 10 rounds on the range.
Okay.
Even when the SAFE Act passed, originally you're allowed to carry 7, but you can have 10 on the range, which I thought was kind of silly because in real life you can only have 7, but when you're faking it, you can have 10.
Right.
Yeah.
So realistic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So the 10-round magazine, or if you have the high capacity magazines, they have to be permanently disabled, so they only hold 10.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So when you come from out of state, you better have 10-round magazines and keep the gun locked. Now, you talked about it having the paperwork. Is there something that you have to do in terms of paperwork to show that, hey, I'm coming to this match, or hey, I've got permission from the state of New York or Massachusetts or whatever? Is there something that you have to get to make it official?
So when we put our matches on, like the Battle of Saratoga, which is going to be at the end of June, we'll get it sanctioned by NRA, and then they send us a form, and we email that out to our out of state competitors. So they print that out and they have that with it. So that tells, if God forbid they get pulled over and they say you have a firearm, blah blah blah, that gives them permission because they now have a reason to be in New York State with their firearm.
Gotcha. All right. Makes sense. That doesn't sound anywhere near as bad as I thought.
No, it really and truly isn't. It really isn't.
So, I asked this to everybody, and like, it's gotten better. At first, it was like 1 out of every 10 came up with an interesting answer. Now it's getting a little bit better because because I guess people are preparing for it now, and they're trying to think of weird things that they have in their range bag. But besides the usual stuff that everybody takes with them to a match, is there something that you put in your range bag that you take to a match, whether it's a local match or a sanctioned match, every time you cannot go without it, and why?
So my answer, and everybody who knows me knows this, is cookies.
Oh,
I am not allowed to come to a match unless I bring cookies.
I want to go to one of your matches.
I've even flown out to Oklahoma with cookies for a match. And I have no idea how this whole thing started, but I love to bake, and people know that. So now I bake cookies.
Very, very good.
Not what you expected me to say, was
Not
it?
at all what I was expecting. And that's why I asked the question. That's awesome. I've gotten
And
weird things like pickle juice and, like pickle,
right.
you know, but cookies, I like it. Good
That's
answer.
right. That's right.
So do you after you got the bug and you started shooting, the local matches, and you started going to the sanctioned matches, did you get the bug that says, I want to get good at this, or I'm just doing this for fun? Were you, how serious did you become about it? And how did that translate into, practice and preparation?
So I am going to be a lifer marksman. I am not the best at practicing, and that's why I'll be a lifetime marksman.
Right.
Just because life gets in the way.
It does.
And I don't have the time that I need to put in to get any better. I think about it and I'm like, well, yeah, it probably would be good to practice a little bit more.
You're doing mental
But
preparation, right?
A little mental. That's right. That's right. But it really, I'm not there. I tell people all the time that I know that there's not a Lexus waiting for me at the end of this match.
As long as there's not
So
Dairy Queen at the end.
that's right. And that's sometimes every once or twice there was. Um, but I'm there for the fun, definitely for the fun and the camaraderie of the people, and it's like a big old family reunion that happens every time we go to one of these major matches.
Yep, it really is. So, you mentioned getting the Dairy Queen. Any funny or interesting stories about that?
So my very now it's coming back to me. So my very first sanctioned match that I went to.
Oh, this is why you blocked it out.
This is why I blocked it. It's true. Now that I think about it, oh my goodness. So I was shooting my beloved revolver. And this is one of the things where the safety officer was not well versed in the rules. So I'm shooting a revolver and I flip it upside down to empty out the rounds. And all of a sudden he's like, stop. And so he dinged me for the muzzle over the berm.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. So I shed a few tears and got over it. And so, yeah, so that's right. That was my very first sanctioned match.
oh, no wonder you blocked that out.
Yeah. Yeah. Got the DQ on that one. So, and
Well,
as you know, shooting, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when, that type of thing. Because
yep.
everybody will, yeah.
At some point, it's going to happen for one reason or
Some point,
another.
right,
As long
right.
as it doesn't involve shooting someone or yourself, it's
Exactly. Exactly. And and then, being a safety officer, I, of course, DQ'd my fair share of people. So I have sympathy for them. I do have sympathy, but I have to follow the rules.
yep. Now you got started in 20. Did I see right? 2011? Is that right? Or was it
I
earlier?
believe so. Yeah.
So 8 years of this madness. How have your thoughts on how the sport has changed for women, or in terms of women shooters over those years, and what do you see happening in the future? Because we need more. It's encouraging to see more women in the sport. We got to get,
Absolutely.
and so how do we? How do you think we change that or continue to improve in the future?
So what I do personally is if I'm at a match and I see a woman on this, standing on the side, whatever, watching her boyfriend, husband, whatever, shooting, and I'll go right up to them and I'll be like, "How come you're not out here shooting?" And they're like, "Oh, I can't do this. I'm not good enough," or blah blah. They have every excuse under the sun. And I said, "Let me tell you something." I said, "We all started right where you are." I
Mm.
said, we didn't wake up one day and say, "Hey, here I am. I'm going to shoot an IDPA match and I'm going to be great at it." and to me, and I've had several women go, "You're right." And I've gotten them interested in it and they start shooting. So I think it's just a question of us as the shooters that we are now, going over to these people that are not as confident as we are shooting these matches, and just talking to them and tell them, "Look, we'll help you.
Yeah.
We'll be more than happy to go to the range with you. We'll go to a local match with you. We'll go to a practice with you. Just let's do it. Just come on, let's do it."
Yep. Be good ambassadors for the sport.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
as we wind this up, the last question, you've sort of alluded to it with one of your earlier answers, but what is it about IDPA that keeps you doing this for 8 years now, getting involved in the SOI program, um, it, you know, traveling to the nationals for 10 years straight? Um, what is it about the sport as opposed to, I mean, you could be shooting something else. You could be doing, you know, shooting trap. You could be shooting bullseye. You could be shooting USPSA. Why IDPA? What is it about it? And why do you love it?
So again, it's the people. It really and truly, and I know you've heard this time and time again, but it really is the people. Everybody is just so supportive and so nice and want to see you succeed. Nobody wants to see you fail. I've gone to several matches where, God forbid, if somebody's firing pin breaks in their gun or whatever, and you'll have 10 people come up to you and say, "Here, use my gun." Or if you've traveled and you go, "Oh my gosh, I forgot my holster or my IDPA vest," or what. I mean, just there's so many people that just run up to you and go, "Here you go, use this. This is, go for it."
Well, thank you so much for doing this. I really do appreciate it. I hounded you a little bit trying to get you to come on the show, and you were probably like, who is this strange person sending me these emails? I really appreciate I appreciate you coming on the show and doing it. I really have enjoyed talking to you, and I'm hoping it'll probably be Worlds, but looking forward to seeing you on the range. All right, that's all the time we have for today. I want to thank our guest for coming on the show and our sponsors for making all of this possible. Take a moment, if you would, to check out the website, check out our show notes at unloadpodcast.com. We've got lots of interviews with more amazing guests like the one you heard today. Join our Facebook group at unloadpodcast.com/Facebook for all the latest updates and to connect with other fans of the show. And if you'd like to support the show, we sure would appreciate it. Consider becoming a patron at unloadpodcast.com/extra. I've got some full-length interviews and special content available there exclusively for patrons as well. And if you know somebody or you yourself would make an interesting guest for a future episode of Unload and Show Clear, please contact me at lloyd@unloadpodcast.com or click on the contact page on the website and send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. Tune in again next time for another episode of Unload and Show Clear.